We are salt and we are light. We are healing and we are hope. That is the message today, and I'm so glad the sun is shining.
Yeah.
I was thinking in my mind, well, it'll still be a powerful word about being the light of the world, but how more wonderful to feel just the physical impact of sunshine on our faces and light pouring through our windows. We had a wonderful leadership retreat yesterday, and one of the things that we talked about was getting the word out, not just about our church, but about God. And I had a conversation with one of our elders about sometimes when we just say like the wrong thing when we're trying to talk to people. One of our biggest fears about being salt and light, we take this commandment in the Bible, this declaration, where Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. And one of our biggest fears is that something we will say or do will have exactly the opposite effect, right, of what we intend to have. You may be familiar with the Jewish writer Eli Wiesel, who was a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote a very powerful novel called Night that my son read in middle school, and I was so impressed with the school for having them read that particular novel at an early age. For a long time, Eli didn't really talk about his experiences in the Holocaust, and he actually had the opportunity to meet a French Christian writer, Francois Mauriac. And he really was going to meet Mr. Mauriac, who is a pretty prolific Christian writer, was going to talk to him about perhaps being introduced to the French Prime Minister. And Mauriac had been a member of the French resistance movement during the Second World War. Well, Eli tells about his interview appointment, I guess, with Mr. Mauriac. And he was actually very disturbed because when he went to talk to him, he had intended to talk politics, how do I get to meet these people, etc. And all Mr. Mauriac could talk about was his love of Jesus Christ and how Jesus had really protected him and saved him through the war. So Eli's a Jew. He wasn't really trying to convert him, but for some reason, Mr. Mauriac got on this whole thing about Jesus, 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 Jesus. And Eli gets up and says, I've had enough. I don't want to hear any more about this Jesus. Nobody has suffered more than my people, not even your Jesus on a cross. And Mauriac just gets up and runs after him and says, I'm so sorry, I didn't think you'd take it that way. But since you have that great pain, why don't you share your testimony? And so Eli credits that conversation about Jesus with prompting him to tell his story in that wonderful book, The Night. Now that's our biggest fear, right? That someone that we might share a conversation with, even mildly, will run angrily from the room or actually turn totally away from us. So I don't tell that story to scare you. I tell that story to say that the only thing that you really have to do is tell your story, and sometimes if we're wise enough to understand that what's important to people is their story, sometimes it pays us to listen as well as talk. Well, here's another awesome expression of being salt and light. In 1972, there's a young Egyptian businessman who lost a very valuable wristwatch, probably valued around $11,000. A few days after he lost the wristwatch, it was returned to him by a garbage worker in the city of Cairo. Garbage worker was literally a garbage worker who not only collected the city's garbage, but was dressed pretty filthily in rags. And the watch had the man's name engraved on it, and as he returned it to the businessman, he said, "My Jesus told me that I should be honest until death." Well, the businessman later told a reporter, "I didn't know Christ at the time, but that garbage man told me that he was commanded by the love of Jesus Christ to be honest and faithful no matter what." He found the garbage man and said to him, because of what you have done in your great example, I will worship the Christ that you are worshiping. This businessman started studying the Bible, he grew in his faith, and soon he and his wife began ministering to Egypt's poor. Eventually, he was ordained in the Coptic Christian church, and he now leads a church that meets outside the poorest fringes of Cairo, outside Garbage City. Two huge extremes, right? Saying the wrong thing, and then this unknown garbage man being able to, in a very unique circumstance, minister to a rich and powerful businessman who ultimately becomes a minister. We've heard that every one of us is called to be salt and light. Don't hide your light under a bushel is one of those favorite axioms that people talk about, and they don't even necessarily always attribute it to a Christian source, let alone the Bible. So what's the point of salt? Salt in the ancient world was not only flavor, but it was preservation. Flavor, the Bible tells us. If salt has lost its flavor, it's really not good for anything. So if we're not making a difference, if we're not adding something to this mix of life, what in fact is our real purpose? Light. We know the purpose of light. It's illuminating, it pierces the darkness, it provides hope and warmth. So we're not Francois Mauriac talking to Elie Wiesel. We're not the garbage man outside Garbage City talking to a rich man about finding his monographed $11,000 watch. So how do we live out these declarations? What does it really mean to be salt and light, and why is it even important? I looked at the Message translation to see if we could get a more contemporary rendering of this text, and I think you'll enjoy this. Beginning with verse 13 in Matthew 5, Eugene Peterson renders this text like this. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be the salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. But if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. Don't suppose for a minute that I've come to abolish or demolish the scriptures, either God's law or the prophets. I'm not here to demolish, but to complete. I'm going to put it all together in a vast panorama. God's law is more real and lasting than the stars in the sky and the ground at your feet. Long after stars burn out and earth wears out, God's law will be alive and working. Trivialize even the smallest item in God's law, and you will only have trivialized yourself. But take it seriously, show the way for others, and you will find honor in the kingdom. Do you get what Jesus is really driving home? The point is that you are called to be salt and light, not so that you can shine, but so that people will see godliness in the humdrum, in the pain, and yes, in the joy around them. You're called to be light, not so that people will clap at your wonderful accomplishments, but you're called to be light so that your life will really scream out the message, God is pretty awesome. And here's my take on just the piece of awesomeness that I've been able to experience. A lot of us have a problem with that imagery of a city on a hill, because for many years in our country's history, we have used that analogy to say that because we are a Christian nation, we are somehow superior and exclusive. God never intended the city on a hill to be above the thing that it was supposed to glorify. The city on a hill doesn't point to itself. The city on the hill bears witness to the goodness of God. The salt isn't there to help you taste salt. You know when you put too much salt on food, you lose the flavor of the very thing that you're trying to bring out. Salt enhances, it doesn't cover up. And so our work in the world is not intended to make people think that we're just so wonderful. But it's intended to make people think, you know, that Jesus thing that you're doing, I want to know more about that because I see what it causes you to do, who it causes you to be. Jesus wants us to shine, not for our own sake, but so that the world through us might better see and understand the God who made us all. And that's a pretty tall task for people who are used to touting our own individual accomplishments, and for people who like pats on the back, and people who want to feel like they're being effective. I think that's one of the hardest things in Christianity, about Christianity in a society like ours, is we're used to kind of getting credit for stuff. We like chalking up what we've done. There's some churches, and I've been in them, where they even pat you on the back. Oh, you invited X number of people to church, or you've led so many people to the Lord. The idea is not to get a pat on the back. The idea is to shine so that in our light, God is glorified. And that's where we should have our real joy and excitement. Jesus tells us not only what, but why. That God might be glorified. The message of your lived testimony, the story of your service, is that God is truly awesome. So we struggle to figure out exactly how we can tell those stories, how we can tell others about God, and what it really boils down to. We talked about perseverance a few weeks ago, but really just relationship and authenticity. For many of us, it's the way we serve, it's how we serve, and being in touch with why we serve. When homeless people at PADS see you hand them a plate and see a smile that reflects respect and love and dignity and not condescension, when we eagerly and happily give them seconds and ask the children if they need more juice in their sippy cup, when we're looking around to see who needs what next, and people feel like, oh, the food was great, the generosity felt good, that's salt, that's light. It's shining light in a very dark, and these days a very cold place. It's salt just to have conversation, just to know that someone looks at you. Many of our guests at PADS are people that others don't even look at or make eye contact with on the street because there's something maybe a little disheveled. It breaks my heart to see those kids come in and kind of know the drill. I said last week that that's their routine. It's just heartbreaking to me. So a little extra apple juice in the cup is a little salt, a little light, a little relief to a parent who may not be able to fill that sippy cup tomorrow. And lest you doubt the impact that one of us can have, even two of us can have, or even 40 of us can have. Think about what we're doing in Belarus. Think about one person asking us to join him in sharing with kids in an orphanage and a summer camp. And being just this small church, one of the largest contributors to that ministry among other disciples' churches. Think about this group of people being real salt and real light on a hot Saturday in August. a few of us together sending money to Week of Compassion, and a few of us together working to support family shelter, a few of us together contributing to fish, a few of us together working on the phones at Love Christian Clearinghouse, a few of us together helping with a fundraiser for what used to be called Walk-In Ministry, now called Hope's Front Door, a few of us together helping to raise extra money to renovate the bath facilities at First Congregational. A few of us together working in these small but important ways sends the message, not they're so awesome, although people will say that to you, but God is so awesome. And because He is, we are compelled to share the love that we have known. We are compelled to return the great sense of hope and the great sense of peace that we have experienced. We are compelled to welcome because He has welcomed us all. When I was in the 5th grade, we learned this wonderful little song that I found out that Perry Como actually recorded years ago. But many children's choirs have sung this song ad infinitum, I'm sure, since 1952 with Perry Como. And it's amazing to me that I have remembered the lyrics to this little chorus. And as soon as I read the text a few months ago as I was planning the sermon, this song came to me. And I thought, how in the heck am I going to fit this song in without making it corny or hokey? So I'm not trying to force fit, but now that I've said what I've had to say, maybe you'll see the importance. Have you ever walked into a room and flipped on a light switch? In one moment, darkness becomes full of light. It doesn't matter whether you have a single bulb in your closet, whether it's a huge fixture in your dining room, whether it's the table lamp next to your bed. The moment you turn the light on, darkness scatters. This wonderful song is called One Little Candle. It is better to light just one little candle than to stumble in the dark. Better far that you light just one little candle. All you need is a tiny spark. If we all said a prayer that the world would be free, what a wonderful dawn of a new day we'd see. And if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be. As a 5th grader, we were reminded we're all singing together. You are your own little candle, and if you do what you're supposed to do in the world, this is going to be a better place. It's not about you individually. It's about your collective light shining. And this wasn't a Christian message at the time. Like I said, these terms of salt and light have been lifted out of their Christian context and just become part of our wider culture about what healthy societies are supposed to be about. But lest we ever forget how important it is what you do. Your little grains of salt add so much flavor wherever they're scattered. Your little light. If you're only a match in the midst of darkness, darkness is shattered by the presence of even the tiniest match. And collectively, if we were to stand in a room with our individual candles, with our individual matches, with our individual gifts, working together, wow. We not only say, that's a pretty cool church, what we're really saying is, God is just awesome. And glory be to God. I hope that there are some people who are the beneficiaries of your goodness and your kindness, not only here locally, but around the world, who will say to themselves, as the rich Egyptian said, that Christ that you worship, I want to know more about him. Because if he can make you live the way you live, there's something to be said for following that carpenter from Nazareth. Your light is so bright because wherever you are banishing darkness. Your salt is flavorful because wherever you are adding to people's experience of godliness. Be salt, be light. Even the tiniest little bit can shatter the darkness that surrounds our world. Let's not forget to shine and to be flavorful, for this is what God has told us that we are to do. Amen.